Hello and a very warm welcome to our webinar in which we're going to get some independent insights from the team here at ECO into the 43rd board meeting of the Green Climate Fund, or GCF. It's my great pleasure to welcome you here today, along with my colleagues Jean-Baptiste Routier, Zsofia Kovacs, Zsofia B.43, and Elena Remp. For over 25 years, our consultants at ECO have supported and guided our clients to achieve low carbon, climate resilient development. We do this through encouraging and building systemic transformation and catalyzing that, and that's our work, to build strong foundations for impact. To date, we've mobilized over 5.9 billion, and after this board meeting, more than that from the GCF over the past decade. And we're keen to support increased access to climate finance for our GCF stakeholder community. This webinar is one of those. We're also building a platform for building capacity related to climate finance, our GCF, our ECO Institute. So if you've followed us for some time, you'll appreciate that our experts deliver incisive analysis that's rooted in our extensive experience of the GCF and project and program design. This strong foundation allows us to offer you the insights needed to gauge the current mood of the GCF. What is the board thinking, where the Secretariat is going, to keep abreast of critical developments. If there's anything you'd like us to cover specifically in these briefs and these debriefs, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can email us. We'll give you in the chat the email address. You can connect with me or anyone from the team on LinkedIn. Please do get in touch. But let's get on with this webinar. Let's get going. So this time, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm the founder of ECO. I established ECO 25 years ago. I'm a mechanical engineer by background, really focused in on the upstream design and development of projects. Together in our panel today, we have our consultant, Zsofia B.43. Hello, Zsofia, welcome. She'll be diving into the recent GCF Insight report. That's a report we put together each board meeting, focusing on a particular topic. This is our 30th edition. And the title of that report is Bridging the Gap, Unlocking More Effective Collaboration Between the GCF and the Private Sector. This edition, which was led by a colleague of ours, Patricia Cato, investigates what it takes for private sector projects to mobilize and access GCF funding. What are the systemic barriers, if any, are they facing, and put forward ideas of how to address that. Do click on the QR code on your screen if you'd like to access that. The report provides a clear overview of the process that private sector actors go through when seeking GCF funding, making this pathway more accessible. It also highlights key trends in GCF financing aimed at supporting the private sector better. Zsofia will give us some details on that report and some insights. We also have our senior analyst here, Elena Remp. Hello, Elena. Warm welcome. She will share insights from our recent white paper. The development of this was led by our senior consultant, Claire Wingfield. It's entitled The Investability Bridge. So all around getting private sector finance mobilized. So how blended finance is scaling private climate action. It's a white paper. QR code is on your screen here. Elena will discuss, and Claire in the paper discussed how trillions in private capital exists and is available potentially for deployment, but it's fundamentally out of reach for the high impact adaptation and resilience projects where funding is desperately needed. So our latest white paper addresses the structural barriers which create this misalignment. The challenge is not a lack of capital or proven models, but a persistent gap in investability and perception. Digging into that in a moment. After that, we'll unpack some key issues that emerged from the 43rd board meeting of the GCF with my colleagues and principal consultants, Jean-Baptiste Routier and Zsofia Kovacs. Warm welcome to both of you. The board meeting took place about 2 weeks ago, on the 27th to the 30th of October. Please do introduce yourself as we go, participate, write your comments in the chat and submit your questions. We'll do our best to address them. We'll also be putting together a replay kit. Sign up to our latest thinking newsletter to receive it. And we'll give you the link for that as well. Right, so let's get started with our first agenda item. Zsofia, are you ready for that?
Yes.
Zsofia is one of our consultants here at ECO. Please tell us a bit about yourself.
Thank you, Grant. Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining today. I'm Zsofia B.43, consultant at ECO, based in Dubai. My background is in biotechnology, and my professional experience spans the private investment and climate finance sectors, focusing on project structuring and capital mobilization in emerging markets. Prior to joining ECO, I worked in London on large project finance transactions with institutional investors, supporting complex structuring across renewable energy, infrastructure, and healthcare sectors. At ECO, I support private sector clients across a range of assignments, including structuring GCF proposals and helping fund managers and investors mobilize public climate finance more effectively.
Great. So you're going to walk us through the GCF Insight report. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Grant. So welcome, everybody. Today, I'll share insights from our latest GCF Insight, looking at how the Green Climate Fund and the private sector can collaborate more effectively. To prepare this insight, we drew from several resources. We conducted interviews and surveys with a range of stakeholders, from private sector proponents to NDAs and accredited entities that have worked directly with the GCF. And we reviewed GCF frameworks, project portfolios, and recent reform discussions. The findings are also informed by ECO's consulting experience and the discussions held during the recent GPIC conference in Abu Dhabi, beginning of October. In the interest of time, I've selected some of the most relevant and interesting findings to share with you today that best illustrate the current dynamics between the GCF and private sector actors. So let's start with one of the most important questions we explored. What barriers do private sector actors face when accessing the GCF? The first set of challenges relates to accreditation. Many private sector proponents describe the accreditation process as long and unpredictable, often taking 5 to 7 years, which creates significant sunk costs and lost opportunities. In addition, the process involves complex reporting and heavy fiduciary requirements, which carry significant human resource implications. The GCF has alternative access routes for the private sector. The first is the project-specific assessment approach, or the PSAA. It's a fast track for specialized fund managers with a strong track record, allowing them to participate directly without full accreditation. It is currently a pilot program running until March 2026, after which the board will review its results. The second option is through the executing entity model, where private sector actors co-develop projects with an accredited entity. However, our insight found that this route can still be challenging in practice. Choosing the right partner is very important to avoid miscommunication and excessive review leading to further delays. That said, the recent accreditation reforms approved in the last board meeting in July 2025 are very promising. Throughout the GCF funding process, a number of systemic challenges appear, from concept design to board approval. The first barrier is the level of detail and limited flexibility in the GCF's requirement, with a highly prescriptive approach and reported rigidity regarding safeguards. Makes the GCF take a more involved approach than is typical for a limited partner in equity funds. Second, approvals are often lengthy and unpredictable, which makes it difficult for private investors to plan and commit capital within commercial timeframes. The dominant role of multilateral development banks among accredited entities also create access challenges for smaller or specialized private sector players, who often struggle to engage directly with the fund. From our research, the NOL is one of the main reasons projects are pushed and delayed in the process. The current NOL system was designed mainly for single country public sector projects, and in practice, many NDAs lack the technical capacity and understanding to evaluate or accommodate private sector proposals. Finally, another challenge is the absence of clear GCF investment priorities. Instead, priorities are determined by each country's climate policies and national strategies managed through the NDA. And the GCF has limited influence over these decisions, which makes it difficult for private sector actors to anticipate demand, align their investment, or identify entry points where their proposals could have the highest likelihood of support, especially for multi-country projects. Despite the challenges, these are some of the key points that private sector actors and accredited entities shared during our interviews on why partner with the GCF. First, the GCF risk-taking ability encourages other investors to come in and allows blended finance structures and risk-sharing mechanisms that make projects viable. Second, the GCF is uniquely positioned to channel large-scale climate finance into markets and regions that are otherwise hard to reach. Third, partnering with the GCF enhances trust and confidence among investors and governments because its involvement signals robust due diligence and alignment with international climate standards. And finally, the fund helps unlock new markets by supporting adaptation and resilience projects in emerging economies. It allows private investors to enter new sectors and build a track record for future investments. To close, I'd like to share a few recommendations that came out of this insight, particularly for private sector proponents engaging with the GCF. The first one is about concessionality and additionality. You might have heard this before. It's essential for proponents to clearly explain how GCF funding shares risk appropriately and adds value rather than providing excessive concessionality. Second is the climate rationale. Many proposals still lack a clear narrative linking the climate problem with the proposed intervention. Making clear why the project is climate relevant and how it delivers impact is very important. Third, early stakeholder engagement. And I want to repeat this because it's very important. Early stakeholder engagement. We've seen that early coordination and consultation with NDAs, ministries, and local partners can save a lot of time later in the process, helping proponents align expectations and secure support before submission. Finally, strong proposals are those that sit clearly within a country's ownership framework, ensuring coherence with NDCs and GCF investment priorities. And integrating adaptation and mitigation synergies could improve competitiveness and strengthen the case for country endorsement. Thank you for your attention. You can find the full insight through the QR code shared on this screen. And don't hesitate to reach out if you'd like to share feedback or continue the discussion. I now hand it over to Grant.
Zsofia, really appreciate that. Interesting three key findings or recommendations related to concessionality. I think one of those came up in the board meeting now, so we'll come back to that topic there. The climate rationale and stakeholder engagement. That's a massive area in which we often supporting private sector players in helping them with that stakeholder engagement that is not perhaps coming naturally to them. Which of those three would you pick if it was the main one that you wanted to highlight that private sector need to pay attention to?
I think I repeated twice, is the early stakeholder engagement, which is very important.
Yeah, it's really a critical factor and was mentioned at the board meeting. So as I said, we'll be coming back to that. So thanks, Zsofia. We're now joined by Elena Remp. She's a senior consultant here at ECO. Just wait for Elena to come on the screen. Warm welcome to you. You're joining us from Paris or near Paris?
Near Paris, yes, from France. Yeah, hello, Grant.
Welcome. Tell us a bit about yourself.
So my background is in international development. I have a master's in development management from Sciences Po and from the LSE. And I personally started my career in a multilateral development bank. After that, I joined a French development agency. I was working as a project manager. I specialized in development banks, which means that I worked on climate finance projects across many countries, including in South America and in Africa as well. And in my work at ECO, my focus has increasingly shifted towards the private sector and its role in climate finance. And this includes how we can best make blended finance work.
Right, so that's what you're going to talk about in presenting this white paper. Yeah, go ahead, please lead us into it. Thanks.
Thank you, Grant. So yes, as Grant mentioned, ECO has recently published a white paper on blended finance. And today I'm going to be discussing what we identified in this paper as the key enablers to scaling blended finance. So first, I will just briefly go through the context and the methodology behind this paper. So essentially, this paper is the result of many discussions and afterthoughts our team had after attending different climate finance events. So for example, the GCF Private Investment for Climate Conference, the Building Bridges Conference, and the OECD Forum on Green Finance and Investment. The sources that we used to write this white paper include a literature review. It includes our own consultant experience working on blended finance. It includes insights and thoughts from the events we attended. And it also includes some proven case studies from our work, including the very successful Green Fund, which ECO helped design. So if you'd like to know more, I encourage you to take a look at this paper and to read more about what these case studies are. So the central question driving this white paper and all of its insights was, how can we transform high impact, high risk climate projects, especially in adaptation and nature, into bankable and scalable investment opportunities for the private sector? In our white paper, we show that this hinges on several conditions being met, one of which is to make DFIs more commercially minded. Now, this itself depends on a few critical aspects. The first is to optimize the financial structure with which DFIs operate to attract more commercial funds, to attract more private funds. The second is to increase their operational speed and their agility, again, to align them more closely with the private sector and with private sector timelines. And the third, and perhaps most importantly, is concessionality. So systematically deploying DFI's concessional capital in a strategic way and use it to de-risk investments and to crowd in more private capital. So our paper also shows that successfully scaling blended finance requires having more accurate data, more transparent data, and generally just more data. This is particularly the case when we're speaking of adaptation and of nature activities as well. So currently, thanks to the GEMS database, we know that default rate risk perceptions in emerging markets are often overestimated and mispriced. And this finding is absolutely crucial because knowing this, we can work to reduce the cost of capital in emerging markets, and in this way drive more investments to those markets, including in climate adaptation and nature. Now, what is also essential is standardization. This again is particularly the case when we're speaking of adaptation and of nature activities, because currently metrics for adaptation and nature tend to be quite fragmented. However, if we manage to unify these, we can bring and create more financeable opportunities, reassure the private sector about where their investments are going and what kind of impact those investments are having. And in this framework and in this aim of closing the perception gap, DFIs and multilateral climate funds are absolutely essential. They can provide data-intensive due diligence processes, which can work to reassure private investors in the context of blended finance about where their investments are going and what kind of impact they're having again. And this includes, for example, the strong adherence to high ESG and MRV standards, as we're observing with the GCF. Now, our white paper has also shown that nature and adaptation are increasingly codified as investable asset classes. And this is the result of several innovative financial mechanisms. So these include biodiversity credits, payment for ecosystem services, and also performance-linked financial instruments. We're seeing some great potential with some of these instruments. So for biodiversity credits, for example, we have early analyses showing they have the potential to deliver internal rates of return of 10 to 15% over 30-year periods. For payment for ecosystem services, we're also witnessing very positive trends, including at the moment an increasing move towards result-based models, meaning that we link payments not to activities, but rather to environmental outcomes, so to verified positive environmental outcomes. Now, another key takeaway from the white paper is the role of NDBs. In blended finance, national development banks are absolutely essential actors. They have a very unique set of advantages, which includes their in-country expertise, their knowledge of the local context, their local risk management capabilities, and also their ability to form strategic partnerships. So NDBs are very well placed to form partnerships with local institutions, but also with regional and international institutions. So now, tying this all back to the GCF in this framework and in this aim of executing the investability bridge is not just a participant, but is actually a very central player and an enabler of the framework. The GCF has played a critical role in many of these innovative financing mechanisms. It has pioneered investments in nature, including in nascent and harder to monetize asset classes. And it also has a very strong track record of empowering and supporting national development banks. So the GCF has a really key role to play here. And in our white paper, we have included some case studies and some examples showing how the GCF has scaled blended finance mechanisms. So I really encourage you to have a look at this paper and to learn more about what these examples are. Thank you.
Really appreciate that. Fascinating report. For me, I'm just so interested in the risk reduction, the addressing of perception of risk, in fact, that you're talking about, and a lot of our training to support people who mobilize in climate finance is to help them understand that idea of risk, how risk is, and the perceptions of risk are not necessarily matched with real risk. So how can you use mechanisms to take that forward? And we all have different perceptions of risk, don't we?
Yes, I agree. But again, I believe that having more data is absolutely essential to correct certain mispriced and overestimated risk perceptions.
Yeah, absolutely. It hinges on data, it hinges on experience, getting more experience in a market and using public funding, small amount of public funding that's available in a wise way to help private sector test out the market is a critical way of getting more information, isn't it? More on the ground information. Super, thanks very much. Please do ask questions. It's great to see people interacting, introducing themselves, both on LinkedIn and on YouTube. Great to see you both, all of you there. Hello, Leah. Hello, Santiago. Hello, Alexander. Abdullah Shrid, welcome to you. Nick, great to see you here. And Jens, and some people from our team. Hello, Emma. Great to see your post just now. If you have questions for Elena, or if you have questions for Zsofia or for our team, we're going to talk about the board meeting now. If you have any questions, please do ask them. We'll put them on the screen, perhaps, or just discuss them, explore them further. And we're happy to take your questions at any time. So now we're going to move on in our agenda to reflect on some of the key points, the developments and issues that came out of the 43rd meeting of the GCF board meeting, which took place at the end of October, so about 2 weeks ago. We'll be unpacking the events with the help of two of our principal consultants, Jean-Baptiste and Zsofia. Great to see you here. Jean-Baptiste, you're joining us from Mauritius. One of the private sector projects has Mauritius as one of the countries that was approved at this board. Tell us a bit about yourself, Jean-Baptiste.
Yeah, thank you, Grant. Yeah, effectively, I'm based in Mauritius. So I'm an agronomist and ecologist. I spent quite a long period of my life working on climate change for more than 22 years now. Starting from the period of the Kyoto Protocol, developing project on methodology for that framework, and then I've been involved in the RED Plus program, the different development around RED Plus, around supporting countries in negotiation for the COP. And now at HECO, I'm focusing mainly on mobilizing climate finance. So I'm advising and structuring public and private financing arrangement, whether for public or private entities. And it's a pleasure to be with all the team today. Thank you.
Fantastic to have you in this call. And also in the call is Zsofia. You're in the UK, so closer to me. I'm based in southeast of London. Welcome here to the event. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Yes, indeed. I'm based in the UK, representing the Southwest. My name is Zsofia Kovacs. I'm a principal consultant at ECO. I'm an economist by background, and I've got about 20 years of experience in the international development sector, having worked in climate, infrastructure, energy, private sector development, quite a range of sectors. At ECO, I focus on mobilizing climate finance, particularly private sector finance, working with impact investors, fund managers, asset managers, BFIs in designing funds, programs, and the projects, and mobilizing finance from global funds like the GCF. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Fantastic you can be here. Alexander's asked a question on LinkedIn about PPPs. We'll get to that towards the end. Let's just dive first into the let's dive into the board meeting. What do you see, Zsofia, as the key takeaways, the real nuggets from that board meeting? I guess the essence of what was there. Would you focus in on?
Yeah, it was a very interesting board meeting, not least because ECO had supported quite a few of the funding proposals that were put forward. In fact, there were 4 that we worked with, accredited entities. All of them were approved, so we were very pleased to see that. And having worked with these accredited entities for over many months, in some cases years, it's really nice to see them approve. So I will maybe highlight a couple of things first around other discussions, and then we will dive into deeper into the funding proposals that I believe many of the participants will be interested in. A recurring theme of the recent board meetings is improving the operational efficiency. And there's a very strong commitment by the GCF Secretariat in adopting more adaptive management of the different processes, the project preparation process, accreditation process, and the implementation have all been ways of streamlining or activities to streamline them. Quite a few board members mentioned the issue about delayed disbursement. So the GCF would like to address this through introducing an adaptive management of the restructuring and extending projects. There's been a commitment to reduce the project preparation timeline to 9 months from concept note approvals. And there's also a commitment to reduce to 9 months the accreditation period, which is for which reason the new accreditation framework has been developed and approved at the previous board, but it is now in effect as of the end of October. So GCF is hoping to see much quicker turnaround times.
There's interesting things there, Zsofia, if I can just interrupt you in it. Interesting, the disbursement issue and unblocking disbursement. It's a massive backlog, isn't it? I mean, is it 18 million that's been approved, and is it somewhere around 7 million that is actually being dispersed to date?
Yes, absolutely it is. And I think there are different issues, and the GCF have identified quite a few of them and mentioned it at the board. One is also just get started. So once the approval happens at the board, it takes a long time to get the funding agreement in place and get actually the project started and start the first disbursement. And then later on, when anything changes that will affect disbursement, will stop and provides a backlog. And that's definitely something that GCF needs to look at, and they are taking actions to improve it.
It's partially, so GCF is saying it's partially something they can do and partially something that's outside their hands. And there are, of course, significant externalities there. So they talked about extensions and restructuring, I understand, and that how this process is causing significant delays in projects. Accredited entities needing to pause projects because of fiduciary or institutional risks. I also heard them talking about some of the fundraising market, the ability to mobilize co-financing is causing part of those delays, and the administrative processes and the complexity of those. The revised accreditation framework, it's part of operational efficiency, isn't it? It came into effect on the 30th of October.
Yeah, so it is indeed aimed at reducing the long time frame that it takes to get from to actually get to the stage where an accredited entity can apply for funding. I think some of the new elements of it is that there's no need for a master agreement to start a project preparation process. So there will be this will be done at project level. And then there are certain other parts of the administrative process to get an accreditation is now moved on to the project preparation phase or just simplified. So
that really comes into stark focus when we talk about direct access entities and country ownership.
Absolutely.
It's partly do with accreditation, isn't it? But also, how do these organizations get projects moving? So we're now talking upstream. The disbursement is the downstream inefficiencies. Upstream, what was the discussion? Where did things go in terms of the DAEs and country ownership?
So DAEs are the accredited entities that are based in the GCF eligible countries. So they are the national or regional entities who can apply for funding, and they have typically they have capacity issues. So for them to develop and go through this process of accreditation and project preparation, they need more support, more capacity support. And GCF, since they want to emphasize country ownership and bring as many direct access entities in their group as possible, they're also committed to support them with by building capacity, also providing funding through the project preparation facility. So there's a possibility to apply for support, for financial support there, but there's also technical assistance support that can be requested through the readiness strategy. In fact, there's a window in the readiness strategy that is dedicated to the AEs, and they can utilize it to their needs. So GCF is trying to move from a fragmented technical, ad hoc technical assistance approach to more like an institutional strengthening system building approach. And also to mention that they are working on revising the country ownership guidelines, which will be presented at B.44. So it will be interesting to see how GCF sees themselves in this process, in the country ownership, and how they want to improve, and being part of it a bit more, rather than requesting just no objection letters from the relevant governments or line ministries, the NDAs and national designated authorities. They will be much more involved and also embedded within the NDA. So there's a new position that has been created recently, the GCF liaison officer, and that person sits within the ministry, so will be able to facilitate both the project preparation process, but also the implementation process later on. And then there's also, as I'm sure most of the audience will be aware of, the GCF restructuring and making the 4 regional departments that have been created, and they will have regional presence in the 4 GCF regions. So again, an important step forward to improve country ownership and GCF play a more active role in the relationship with the NDAs.
Yeah, I see that board members are seeing that it's a very positive thing that this regionalization allows much more localization, which facilitates ownership and such like. But they've got a real problem here with DAEs, haven't they? I mean, currently it's 25% of the portfolio is, I guess that's counting by number of projects. Maybe we have some data on that coming up that Jean-Baptiste will lead us into, but 25% of the portfolio, but that's dropped in 2024, 32%. 2025 now is reaching 25%. And in fact, at board meeting 43, the one that's just been, the projects that were considered, only 20% of them were from direct access entities.
Yes, indeed, that's the case.
Almost all of them, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting to see the different direction of travel when there are more and more direct access entities receiving accreditation. I think there are 5 this time around that got accredited, but recently there's been an increase. Yet the amount of financing or the number of projects put forward by accredited entity hasn't grown with the same. It has actually dropped, as you said.
It's actually dropped in proportion. And those numbers are startling as well. I mean, 101 DAEs. I don't know if that's before these new 5 that are there or after, but out of that, 63 of them have never brought a project to the board. That's a startling number. But you mentioned in the operational efficiency around the AMA, this master agreement between the accredited entity, and that's shifting with this revised accreditation framework and project framework, because there are 29 projects in the pipeline from these DAEs, or 29 DAEs have projects in the pipeline, but substantial number, almost 100% of them don't have any AMA yet. So that's one of those blocks in bringing the projects to the board.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And the Secretariat's response to this, sure, regional presence, more guidelines and such like. The project preparation facility, which allows for focusing on high demand projects. And in fact, the 2 that we worked on in Armenia and Cambodia were both project preparation facility funded projects and local entities, direct access entities. There's a lot about capacity building here, about building the ability for direct access entities to structure projects and bring them forward to the board.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
What next? Yeah.
We can maybe talk about the private sector specifically a little bit.
Yes, please. Yes, please. That's one of, I mean, all of our team here today are private sector focused. Yeah, lead us through it.
So there's a very clear commitment from the GCF to mobilize private sector finance, and that's they also have a target to expect 15 to 17 private sector funding proposals put forward to ITAP, to the Independent Technical Advisory Panel, annually. So that's annual between the next 3-year period. And what we have noted, or we've been noting, having worked with a number of private sector organizations on GCF application, is the difficulty of getting no objection letters and engaging with the NDAs within the countries. That was also mentioned in Zofia's presentation. It's a huge bottleneck for them to move forward to the board or through the review cycle, because they're typically multi-country programs. A lot of them, often they have an investment pipeline, but they don't have very specific projects. And it's been recognized also in the independent evaluation units evaluation, recent one on GCF country ownership, which was presented at the board. And GCF has a few responses to that. So actions in response to that. For example, the country ownership guidelines, which was mentioned, will also specifically focus on providing good practice guidance to the private sector on how to engage with national designated authorities. And in turn, the NDAs themselves will need support on how they can work with the private sector, which is a very different approach to the public sector and single country programs, where they are playing a much more involved, they participate in the design more compared to a multi-sector fund, for example, that some of what the private sector brings to them. So yeah.
Yeah, there's a bit of a tension there, isn't it? It's the country ownership versus private sector, and in some way, I think most board members, certainly the developing country board members, are seeing these as almost mutually exclusive, right? They're seeing private sector projects being mostly multi-country projects. And in fact, at this board meeting, they were praising the fact that out of 24 projects, 18 of them were single country ones. There's a tension there, isn't there?
Yeah, and there's also a need for an understanding from the private sector side when they bring a project to the NDAs, that it needs to be a consultative process. Bring some ideas, let them shape it, and so there's, because it's the country ownership is very important, something that the GCF is known for. So that's not going to change from what we see, but the process could be helped by various ways, like for example the approach that the private sector takes, being consultative. This capacity building through the readiness support program, for example, that the GCF can provide to the NDAs, and that will enable them collaborate with the private sector better. And then also the private sector facility will have a presence in the regions as well. So not just the regional teams will move, but it's actually the private sector facility will also be on the ground, be able to mobilize, work with the locally financing institutions to have mobilized private sector finance from the place where it needs to come.
Yeah.
So shall we move on a bit
track
to
record, management fees?
Maybe we can be brief here and then move on to the actual funding proposal, which are obviously very interesting. So just a few things that came up at this board. Track record of the private sector. It often happens that private equity funds are new entities. Basically, they are set up to manage the fund. So yet they are asked, and the GCF, many board members, especially from developing countries and the civil society observers, look for institutional track record, because that's what others, public sector usually provides, and it's not always the case. Sometimes there are first-time fund managers or those who don't have track record, so that could be potentially an issue. Management fees were discussed also quite a bit at this board in relation to some of the or one or two funding proposals. Again, it's an understanding of what management fees mean in the context of the private sector is different from the public sector, and the fact that the pipeline is usually, when it's a fund, for example, the private sector puts forward an investment pipeline. They are not actual projects, confirmed projects, because obviously the fund will make the investment decision once the program is approved. So there's less visibility on the details of the risks and impacts. So that happens later.
Fascinating issues. I wish we had an extra hour to talk about them. There's many things I'd love to dig into here. Let's continue talking a little bit more about the portfolio. Jean-Baptiste, I think you're going to walk us through a little bit some of the insights that we have from that.
Yes, thank you, Grant, and thank you, Zsofia. I think you already some elements from that section has been discussed already, but I wanted to just to take a question right now from the participants, from Abdul Rashid Isha in Zurich, asking about the major barriers that are limiting DIE's participation. So I think that's an interesting issue that has been touched by Zsofia, and also it's really a mix, but and the private sector projects are also kind of illustrating what could be a barrier. I mean, it's one office or one entity in charge of discussing all those projects that will come to them, and then be discussed, analyzed, compared to the national strategy of the country. And it's depending on the country, it could be quickly a very intense task. If, for example, you have multi-country project coming in with a very complex design, And sometimes, as Zsofia said in the slides, sometimes a pipeline of sub-projects that are integrating the project presented to the GCF are not fully described in the proposal. So it's really difficult for the NDA with their capacity to be able to correctly assess those projects, those sub-projects, and also to assess the potential risks, whether in terms of social risk or environmental risk, financial risk. So quickly for the DA, they have a limitation in terms of internal capacity and in terms of number of persons able to revise those documents, which are generally very complex. You should be, I think, familiar with the funding proposal. So it's a very large document with many annexes. So it could be really a limitation for the DA to be in terms of capacity, having enough person to revise those documents. So I see the time's running, so I will just quickly move on the numbers. So what we should be, the main important elements regarding the numbers for that board is the number of projects presented to the board, which is really high compared to the previous board meetings. And also the funding request is the biggest funding request presented to the board. The biggest one, the last biggest one was in the board B.42, where I think a total of $1.2 billion were requested. So it's demonstrating an increasing number of projects presented to the board with good quality of project, because 22 projects were approved that time. And also an important thing is three projects were approved, and those 3 projects are the first single country project for those countries. So 3 main elements. So I would like to just to quickly discuss about three projects. The first one is the UNIDO project in Oman. I think here it's an early warning system. And I think here the key discussion, I mean, lots of discussion happened regarding, I mean, the fact that this kind of project requesting GCF funds are maybe not really fitting the actual economic situation of the country. And also the accredited entity in charge of presenting, I mean, the accredited entity of the project was probably not also was discussed as probably not being the most suited structure for that project. The other one was Prosperity, so a private sector project. A lot of discussion happened around that project, mainly about the track record of the fund. So Zsofia talked about that issue of funds being structured especially for, or not especially, but around the request of the funds to the GCF. So there is not enough track record to assess the quality and the success of that potential project. So it's kind of very important element to take into account when funds are presenting projects to the GCF. Nevertheless, there is some good positive feedbacks from the board regarding the project approved. Quite a lot of projects had good alignment between the national strategy and the needs of the country and the project design, and that's particularly the case for the project in Dominica and in Benin, as well as in Armenia. So Armenia was a project GCF was working on. So I see we have just 5 minutes left. Yeah, please, Grant.
Benin and Armenia, we worked on both of those. We were very privileged to have the chance of working on them.
Exactly.
I think it might be useful for us to tackle a few of the questions. Maybe take a few minutes just to give us a quick overview of that portfolio. And then we've got 2 questions. We may go just over the hour. If you need to to leave the call. It's a pity, but it would be great if you can stick around maybe for 5 minutes past the hour, or come back to this later and watch the replay on LinkedIn or on YouTube. Yeah, go for it, Jean-Baptiste. Just tell us a little bit about this overview. What really stands out for you from this? I think people can read the.
I think I'm ready. I think we can really focus on the type of disbursement from the GCF. The fact that actually the GCF is through that board demonstrating that it's possible to correctly leverage funds from the private sector. Nearly half of the total amount of money mobilized from that board is on the grant side, and the other half will be through loans or equity, and that's really interesting. From on that point, I just would like to talk about that project in India that was approved. It's a project linked to insurance, the insurance sector. So the GCF is investing 20 million in an insurance program aiming at providing insurance premium to small farmers. And that's really something interesting because the project, so the GCF is through the private sector, directly providing support to beneficiaries, small beneficiaries, poor beneficiaries. And I think this is something that should be highlighted. So if you really want to to dig a bit more on that project. So if I'm not wrong, this is let me just verify. This is SAP 065. So this is kind of really interesting project we should be talking about. So
is that the
also
the SIDB project, is it, or what's the accredited?
Yeah, SAP.
Yeah.
The accredited entity is that one is a national bank for agriculture and rural development.
Okay. So,
and executing entity will be the Schema General Insurance.
Yeah.
So,
okay. So
yeah.
That connects well with the question that Arlette asked on YouTube. Arlette is asking this question to Zsofia, but it's really relevant in this discussion with Zsofia if you want to come on board as well to talk about this. But the central challenge here is not a lack of capital, but a persistent gap in investability. And this project that you're highlighting, Jean-Baptiste, is around insurance, and it's addressing that risk profile, isn't it? It's addressing the perception of risk for private sector, which is the end beneficiaries. Is it farmers, did you say, on this project?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And
Oops, I lost you.
We had the opportunity at ECHO. That's really interesting because we also had that opportunity to discuss about insurance scheme at ECHO for a GCF project in Cambodia. And it's really something that is starting to come up. I mean, starting to discuss with national companies that are able to directly address needs of vulnerable population in country. And this is really something that national banks or national companies can do. And it reflects what Elena was saying earlier about interest of national development banks, but also national companies. And we have that experience also in Philippines with Land Bank. Where we were supporting.
Yeah, that's the use of public sector funding to reduce risks. In this case, the insurance idea is for the farmers themselves willing to invest and invest more because of the coverage related to insurance. It reduces the ultimate risk of a livelihood, their livelihood. We're seeing those mechanisms emerging in terms of guarantees and such like. And that is, Alette, I think your question is actually directly answered by the presentation from Elena that is around the paper on how to mobilize the climate, the funding for these types of projects. We also had a question right near the beginning of the session from Alexander, who said, are PPPs qualified for GCF blending finance? I guess the simple answer here is yes. That's exactly what it's all about. It's about a partnership, isn't it, with public-private partnership? How do you see that, Zsofia or Jean-Baptiste?
Yeah, absolutely. So often the private sector programs include joint ventures set up as PPPs involving obviously the private sector and the government. So there is, I think, the current board list of the funding proposals include different examples for PPPs that will be like build, operate, and maintain type of program. So yeah, it is definitely considered, and there are many examples of approved funding.
Yes, GCF's all about that. When it's private sector project, it's all about blending, whether it's the legal form of a PPP, a public-private partnership, that is dependent on the design of the particular project, but it's definitely something that we can go for within GCF projects. Abdul Rashid has asked us a question around the Jordan project. Abdul Rashid, I think this is the project you're referring to is the Oman one, which was rejected. The Jordan one was an IFC water project, if I'm not mistaken, which was a very large project in Jordan, which was approved, and it's fantastic to see water projects in the regions there. But the Oman project produced lots of anger, I guess, from the board, particularly from the constituencies in the region. There was, talk about a political decision being made here, because Oman, although it's a high-income country, is one of the developing countries according to UNFCCC and such like. And I say something more about it, the Oman project, in terms of the concessionality that Abdul Rashid is emphasizing that, in his view, I think project concessionality should be based on the project itself, not considering the income status.
Maybe, Grant, if I can just come in on Oman. So indeed, income status is not, it wasn't considered as a criteria, even though it was mentioned by, I think, one of the board members. But it was to do with the grant, the type of financial instrument that was requested here, which was a non-repayable grant. And unfortunately, this project came back the second time around. They've made some changes, increased the co-financing in response to previous comments at B.42. But still, the perception, I think, is partly the perception of the developed country board members were that it's still not so that the instrument is still not something that they can easily approve. They would have liked, if it was something else. It's
highly controversial, isn't it? Because early warning systems are seen as part of that fundamental infrastructure. And this, the amount of co-financing was 33 million against 15 million requests to GCF. It's substantial co-financing for the project.
Yeah.
Reduced from the first time they brought it from 25 to 15 now. There were some questions about, is UNIDO the right accredited entity? Perhaps that was less of an issue than just the fact that I think one board member said that Oman's per capita was the GDP is equivalent to some European countries. That was the point that was made. Yeah, hard to say there, Abdul Rashid. We definitely see that there is a perspective from many of the board members. It was a vote of, was it 18 in favor to 4 against? So
I think 5 were against.
5 against, perhaps, yeah. So that's it's a relatively small part of the board saying this project shouldn't go through, and GCF's cutoff is 4 out of the board. So it was close. Is it a political issue? Well, there is some political aspects there because countries are saying we should not be giving this money. And I think, just completely personal view on this, that the current political climate around the world, focusing in more on national priorities, focusing more on national security, responding to voters, which has got to shift towards more protectionist type of approaches, coming out of the US, but not exclusively in the US, is part of the contribution here. It's part of that shift to say, if we approve this, what is it saying to our constituency in our country around where funding is going to a wealthy country? So there could be political aspects there. Yeah, thanks very much for that question. We've just got observations there, can't say for sure. So yeah, thank you so much. It would be great to have an after party and talk about all of these in a lot more detail and dig into some of the projects. Maybe there's some interest in doing that. Fantastic questions from the audience. Thank you so much for joining us today. Hope you've enjoyed the discussion as much as we have. Fantastic effort from the panelists, Zsofia, Elena, Jean-Baptiste, Zsofia, fantastic, thank you so much. And some of the authors behind the scenes that worked on this, Patricia and Claire, thank you so much. And none of this would be possible without our amazing content production team. Ayub, thank you for lots of research here. Sandy, Mariella, really appreciate all the fantastic work you do to bring this great thing to life, this webinar. Thank you so much. And you will find the replay kit on this LinkedIn page after the session ends. It's also available on YouTube. We've had lots of people joining on YouTube as well as on LinkedIn. Fantastic to see you all here. Please tell others about our webinars. We have them after every board meeting. We will, if you sign up for our latest thinking newsletter, we will be getting to you the replay kit from this, I think with presentations, right? And yeah, you'll get more invitations to analyze and discuss the developments of the GCF, other funds as well, how we can move forward to unlock private sector finance. I do invite you to have a look at our website as well. We have 30 issues of GCF Insight. You can see how it's evolved. Just this amazing one that we've just put out is available to download from the website, and this working paper if you head to the Insights section. If you have further questions or comments on the webinar, would like to discuss a project you're working on, please do get in touch with me, with our team here via our website. We also do lots of training related to climate finance. We're building an amazing state-of-the-art online system through our Eco Institute. We also do face-to-face, online and in-person training as well on accessing finance. It would be such a privilege to work with all of you and any of you, as many of you as possible. Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate it. Great to meet with you today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.